Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald Trump and President Putin has just met in Alaska in an attempt to bring a solution to the three-year problem between Russia and Ukraine that is going on right now with so many deaths. And today we will analyze it all the way to the history, more importantly, to predict what the outcome will be, and more importantly, an implication to the stock market. Let's watch on, shall we? So the Trump-Putin Alaskan summit just happened, and it has ended with some interesting outcome. And I think it's important for us to cover it. I think it's pretty interesting to see the dynamics and also draw a parallel from history. I actually think the history will repeat again, and I'll give you the history to look at. These two men, I don't know whether to call them the head of state of two great nations, two great men, or two monsters. But it certainly take a man of Donald Trump's stature to bring Putin out. Clearly, Putin didn't give a damn about President Biden and a lot of other head of states, but I think he really give a damn about Trump. But let's watch on, shall we? First of all, why did they choose Alaska as a location to meet? Well, you may not know that, but Alaska is actually more or less near Russian territory. It's just about 55 miles away from Russia, and it represents a very interesting point between Russia and US. Some of you all may not know, but actually Alaska once upon a time was actually part of Russia, and it was sold to US, and I'll give you a bit of history. And this proximity is the best comfortable place for both head of state to meet. So, some historical context. So, Alaska was sold by Russia to US. At that point in time, the Russians' coffers were totally almost bankrupt. They just fought a Crimean War, and they felt that this piece of land is totally useless, and they fear that they will lose the territory to a war with Britain anyway. So might as well, instead of wasting resources to defend it, might as well sell it to US for a sum of about $7 million in about 1867. So in fact, at that point of time, at the purchase of $7 million, it was deemed as a stupid purchase, right? So the person who organized the whole thing is called Seward. From US side, it's called Seward Folly, right? That means it was then referred to as this purchase is really a dumb purchase. Well, guess what? Today Alaska is in fact a land of resources and strategic importance and that is. And I think everyone in US will actually view that Alaska is a very important piece of land for US right now. Anyway, it really expanded America Pacific Fleet and very vital during World War II and the Cold War. And right now it's a very good place because it has historical links with Russia and of course it's part of US. So for US Russia diplomacy, it will be a great place. So the outcome of the talk so far is there is no agreement. But however, it was rated 10 out of 10 by Donald Trump. And Trump actually said quite a few things that's quite promising. He basically says that Putin actually really wants peace. Now, the question is peace at what price, right? We'll talk about that later. And he knows that he has got no deal right now. So he said there's no deal until there's a deal, right? Kong kana bo kong, in Hokkien, which basically means that talk as if you never talk, right? So basically, what he's saying is that there's no deal right now, but he will continue to do it. Interestingly, during the whole press conference, it's just both him and President Putin just giving a speech, and after that, no questions to be entertained. Now, interestingly, Putin also said that had Donald Trump been a president instead of Biden during that time, he said that this war will not have happened. I think there's some truth to this statement because Trump would have stopped this war from happening by maybe arm twisting NATO or things like that. But anyway, let's watch on. So at this juncture, very interestingly, Trump actually said that the responsibility is now not on Russia, but on Zelensky, which is Ukraine, right? So President Zelensky now must make a deal. Europe need to step up. We can't be keeping this funding forever. So it's a post-summit meeting, right? He actually says this. Now, he basically now said that, he now kind of said that Russia is not the demon or the monster. and now the solution may be found in Ukraine. And he basically says that, you cannot ask me to pay forever. So he kind of hint that, I have one bargaining chip for Ukraine, which is my funding, and I can't fund forever. So he's basically giving pressure right now to Zelensky. And he also hint to Europe as well. You all want this war, you go fund this war. I'm not going to fund it forever. Now, he has a bold proposal is to bring three parties together. Number one is to bring Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. Zelensky is the president of Ukraine. So all three parties come together and he will try to mediate a peace. And he basically want to cast NATO aside and EU aside, which is totally useless for the last 3 years. And I agree with that. Okay. And this put himself as a indispensable mediator. I'll be frank with you. I think Trump might be the only hope of this thing happening. Okay, because all the other channels has been pursued, and if it has been useful, you have been successful earlier, but it wasn't. So this is the approach he's taking. Of course, right? If he's successful, you take full credit, and I'm sure he wants to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'll be frank with you, if he can bring about a peace negotiation, I think he will win the Nobel Peace Prize. So basically, right now, his next path is to have President Zelensky to meet Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., as President Trump said there's no deal on Ukraine after Putin's summit. So Trump said repeatedly that Ukraine needs to make a deal after the summit with Putin without getting a ceasefire. And in a very deep interview with Fox News, he said quite a lot of things, and he basically gave a lot of hint that what is the next path and things like that. And I'll be frank with you, I don't think the next path is going to look nice on Ukraine, but it might actually work. But interestingly, as a gossip, Fox News actually, maybe in an attempt to Saka means apple polish, or make just to feel President Donald Trump's ego, actually said that Donald Trump has actually stopped 7 conflicts, right? And therefore he's a great president now. So of course, then we can try to fact check and things like that. So I've got the system, AI system, to take a look whether how true that is and things like that. To be frank, right? During his first term, he was really instrumental in destroying ISIS. That you must give credit to him when it's due, okay? And then some Serbia-Kosovo conflict was also done by him. But India-Pakistan, questionable. I think that he did play a large part to the conflict. I'll be frank with you. I think the Indian realized that their weapons and strategy are pretty outdated, and they were beaten out of the skies by the Pakistan with the help of Chinese weaponry. Israel-Iran war, was it stopped by Trump? I personally think there's a large part to it. I think the media tend to downplay Trump's contribution. Don't forget, Trump first instituted the bombing of the nuclear facilities, and he quickly said, "This far, no more." And he brought an end to it. I actually think that credit goes to him, okay? And the other conflict like Cambodia, Thailand, I think Prime Minister Anwar probably contributed a lot more. And there are some other minor conflict which I don't even know the history. But clearly he's quite active in trying to bring a war to an end. So I actually think that there is one more big conflict he must bring to an end, which is the Israel-Gaza conflict. It's going on far too long. Too many people has died. And there's a genocide going on there. And I think he need to bring that war to an end. Okay, so if he can bring these two wars to an end, I think he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. I would like to draw a parallel to a history that many Singaporeans and Malaysians probably don't know, which is the Winter War of 1939 to 1940. Very few people actually know this war, but the war right now has striking similarity between Ukraine and Russia. In 1939, Soviet Union, which is then Russia, which is the communist umbrella over it, Soviet Union invaded Finland, okay, expecting a quick victory, expecting to makan up, to finish up the whole of Finland. And surprisingly, the small Finnish forces, okay, were able to inflict a huge amount of casualties to Soviet. And the ratio of death is like 5:1 or something like that. And the Finnish were incredibly efficient in fighting the Russians, and the Russians weren't quite ready with the war, although they declared it and fought. Uh, but but although they kind of win the war in the sense that the Finnish forces defeated quite a lot of the Soviet troops attack, but eventually, in order to call for a peace and ceasefire, they gave up 10% of their territory to ensure peace. Up till today, that 10% of the land is still gone. Okay, and I think that right now, this sets a precedent of what likely will happen between Ukraine and Russia. So back in the Finnish-Russian war, okay, it was also a very big country versus a very small country, and there are a lot of parallels between the two. Right now, it's a David versus Goliath kind of dynamics. So, the mirror image of the story was Soviet Union then attacked Finland, expecting to finish up Finland in a flash, but they couldn't, right? They couldn't, and they were inflicted with a lot of deaths. So in this case, Ukraine is the same thing, right? Well, while Russia did manage to conquer, I think about 19% of the land, but they couldn't, finish up the whole of Ukraine. And it is very similar to what we have seen in the Finnish-Russian War of 1939. And both sides inflict a heavy amount of casualty, with Russia being hit with a bigger amount of casualty. And eventually they concluded and said Finland have to give up 10% of the land. And I think it is very clear to me right now, Putin wants the land that he has conquered and keep it. Very, very clear. So, what's the outcome of this negotiation? Well, Trump has an objective. He wants the war to stop. He doesn't care about what's fair, what's unfair. He doesn't care about who is the aggressor, who is the victim, whatsoever. He just wants the war to stop, and he just want to cut the deal and maybe get a Nobel Peace Prize because he repeatedly wanted it. And I think he's also influencing a lot of countries to vote him for it. So right now, Putin has also outrightly declared that he wants to secure all the lands. He also wants NATO, okay, never to accept Ukraine as part of them. And this was the reason why this war happened. Actually, this war happened because of NATO, right? NATO, through a strong part of US, actually tried to tease Ukraine to join them, and this sparked it off. And really, right now, Ukraine basically is in stuck situation. They will never be part of NATO, and right now they have to probably give up land to ensure peace. So this is my prediction, right? The outcome will be land for peace, right? Land for peace. Russia has outrightly said, "Hey, I got so many deaths. The numbers range from 100,000 to maybe 300,000 or even more. And these people will die for nothing, is it? No way, man. So Ukraine will be arm twisted to give up land in exchange for peace. Is what we in army call a LL situation, right? Some people who doesn't know what LL means, you can ask people who've gone through the army and Hokkien, they will tell you. Zelensky will disagree with Trump to exchange land for peace, but Trump has all the cards. All Trump needs to do is to say, I am not going to pay for all your weapons anymore. I will stop selling weapons, or I will not give you anything, and I'm just going to leave my hands off. Right? EU will never have enough money to pay for the entire war, and Zelensky will basically be stuck. Right? He cannot fight the war without money. In many sense, war, in order to support a war, you need this vitamin M called vitamin money. Zelensky comes from a very poor country called Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't have any resources to fight this by themselves. So Trump, on the other hand, if Ukraine is agreeable, Trump will put some pressure on Russia by forcing China and India to buy less oil or stop buying oil from them So Russia have no choice because these are the only two countries largely to buy oil from them. So we have no choice but to give in as well. So if my prediction is correct, the whole Winter War outcome of 1939 will repeat again 90 years later in 2025 or 26. Well, regardless of all this, a lot of people say, Mr. Lu, what does this got to do with finance and stock market? The truth of matter is that I don't think it has much impact because right now, whatever happened to Ukraine, nobody give a damn. Okay, the stock market still rallies like crazy. Whatever happens to Gaza, nobody gives a damn. The stock market rallies like crazy. And this is how sad and how cruel the world is, but we got to come to realization that this is life. Okay. So I think if there's going to be a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, there will be some positive impact, especially in Europe. I don't know whether that will spill over to the US stock market. Probably a bit, okay? And Trump will, as a result, claim all the credit and things like that, where some people like it, some people don't. I actually hope that Trump can do it. And I think, frankly speaking, Trump is the last hope, right? So, President Trump, we wish you all the best in bringing a closure to this conflict that have cost the lives of a few 100,000 people so far. And let's watch out and see. Our prayers are with this process, and I hope that this will come to an end. So I'll see you later for live stream. Bye bye.